Good morning, guys. Welcome to my channel. Okay, so in yesterday's video you would have seen me gluing down all those bits and pieces to the cover and getting it ready for this piece to go on the very front of the journal. So I was going to do this off camera as my homework, but decided what the hang, I might as well just turn the camera on and get stitching. So I've found myself some crochet cotton. It's quite a fine one. It's not the usual width I would normally go for, but I thought, oh, I'll use it because I sort of want that soft quilted look and not a heavy sort of look. So I thought I'll turn the camera on and get stitching. Now I can't pick that needle up. Really should have my sewing pad down, that wool sewing pad, but I don't. So I'm just tucking my needle behind there, that lace. I thought, well, if you're a junk journaler, a paper crafter, and you don't really do much with fabric and sewing, I thought, oh, I'll just turn the camera on because this might just encourage you to have a play with needle and thread. Now, if you're a hand sewer, I might zoom that in a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. You can see how I'm just following the side of that print. This is a pretty easy sort of little piece to kick off with. If you find yourself some fabric that has some ledger paper, and you just follow the outline of the print. It's a nice simple little embroidery. So I'm just going to do a running stitch around. Will it have a quilted look? It will to some degree, but if I had wadding underneath this as well as the calico, because I put the two layers there, it would definitely have that quilted sort of feel. But it'll still give the impression that there's something going on, so it'll be a very tactile cover. When you run your hands over it, you'll be like, oh, there's stitching there as well as that piece of lace. So it's just a case of follow it along. Nice and simple, nothing too hard about this. This needle I'm using really is designed for beading, so I can feel it getting a little wobbly in my hand and bending. So I'm just going to stop it before the red line, which denotes the boundary of my book. Now, if you're not confident in going straight into the embroidery side of this project, I'd highly recommend you come along and do some invisible stitches to hold everything down. I'm actually going to remove this lace because I can already feel it's puckering. So we know roughly where we want the lace, so I'm not too worried about that not being there. I can feel that the fabric is moving on me, so I just want to make sure it's nice and tacked down, otherwise it'll be a mess. Now, invisible stitch would do this for me. So if you're new to doing some hand sewing in your paper craft, it's just using cotton, normal sewing machine cotton, and going along and just coming up and tacking down a little stitch, tiny little stitch, but then underneath the fabric, bring your needle back up over here, another little stitch, and then bring it back over here, another little stitch, and you'll find that it will hold everything nice and secure. So then you can, you know, go your hardest with your embroidery. Okay. So I'm just going to come up at the top here of this little card. And do a running stitch along that top edge. You could do a lot with this panel. You could add a lot more lace and buttons and bits and pieces. Some little clusters. You could stitch on charms. Yeah, you could really... The only problem with pinning, see what's happened there? See how the thread has got caught around all of those pins? If I had have done the invisible stitch, I would not be stopping now to repin because everything had got caught in. So that's the benefit of invisible stitch. It may add, you know, 20 minutes to your project, but I probably will spend 20 minutes unraveling my thread from being caught on the head of all these pins. Oh well, maybe if I go and stitch down somewhere up here, I can then remove some pins because it'll be sort of holding its own. I think I need to change my needle too. I can feel it really bending, and it's my favorite needle for stitching beads. Okay, and I can finish that off. Just with a little knot. So yeah, if you're a paper crafter, you're probably playing with fabrics anyway, because you'd be doing ruffles and clusters and things like that. So maybe consider doing some embroidery. You don't have to do like full-on stitched flowers and things like that. You can certainly use laces to, you know, build up design. I think if I come across here, get that line in, that will eliminate a heap of pins that are potentially in my way. Yeah, you gotta love the journaling world, whether you junk journal or just a journal maker or a user of the journals or everything above. The scope to bring in other elements, like we had paints and stencils and, oh, it's amazing. And then just catching your junk mail envelopes that your bills come in and what you can do with an envelope, it's just amazing. It's a very creative space to be within. And if you can bring needlework into that as well and preserve doilies and laces and things in your work, oh, I think it's lovely, just lovely. You see so much stuff at the op shop discarded because it's, you know, not used. So in our world, I can get rid of that pin and I can get rid of that pin now. I might come up this here, and that'll tack down that side. And I need to change my needle. This one's just a little bit too fine. This one's better. It's a little bit more substantial in my hand as well, so don't feel like I'm going to bend it, and I've sort of got something more to grip onto. Been finding the last few years that my ability to grip things is diminished somewhat. I don't have fingernails at the best of times, so they sort of aren't there to help me pick up little beads and pins and things. So I'm finding as the older I get, I'm getting what's the word? Is it dexterity? I don't know if that's the right word. I just find that it's getting harder to pick things up that are really fine. Don't know how I'm going to go in the future with beading, because I do love beading, or embellishing things with beads is probably a better word. I've always been concerned with eyesight, you know, what if you lose your eyesight for doing fine work? Never thought about my hands. I did a little bit when I was teaching myself how to crochet, probably about 4 years ago now. I decided I was gonna, maybe even 5, I was gonna learn to crochet. So I got on YouTube and discovered lots of videos to give me the basics, and I had done a little bit when I was a little girl, but not really. And then when we got to school, it was more of a knitting thing where we all knitted a toy for the bed. And then the second part of the year we were knitting we made a jumper. So knitting was, I found to be as boring. That was not going to be me. Row after row. And then my grandmother, who was a big crocheter, she showed me how to crochet one day. We were sitting around the kitchen table at the farm. They were down to visit Grandma and Granddad, and she showed me how to do a square. And now that I look back on that square, because I still have it, and I still have the handwritten instructions that she gave with it, we're not talking a granny square. Needless to say, it didn't go well. I completed it, but it was just too hard. And now that I look back on that square, my goodness, talk about give the girl a difficult task to do. It was, I don't know if you're familiar with crocheting, you'll know what I mean. It was definitely a granny square, but it had in the center of it a flower that stood up. So I was not only crocheting the square, which wasn't even really a typical granny square, it was an unusual looking design. And then in the center of it, it had this floral flower petal construction. So we're talking 3-dimensional crocheting. Thanks, Grandma. Set the kid up for failure. So I've got the instructions where she wrote it out on the kitchen table, and her sample. I don't know what happened to my sample. I'm guessing it wasn't real good. And I just remember her making me make this thing and unpick it, undo it, and learn all my stitches. And I tell you, now even I think I would struggle. And I've taught myself how to crochet, basic crocheting. So when I did learn it, I was crocheting like a machine, And of course, I don't need a heap of blankets, so I did the odd one for myself. But there was just so many patterns I wanted to try, and so many colour combinations, and it was one of those rabbit holes. So probably for 2 years, I crocheted constantly. And I started to get pain in my wrist. A little bit in my shoulder, a little bit in my elbow, but my wrist. And I thought, oh boy, this is not going to go well for my future. So I sort of had to put down the crocheting and find something else. So I do it occasionally now, just to make sure I don't forget what I learnt. But once you sort of learn those stitches, it sort of all comes back to you. But it's sort of very repetitive on your joints. And that's what made me realise, what would I do if I lost the ability to use my hands to that degree, or developed pain and arthritis? So I feel for you girls out there that battle that, because yeah, it's tough, really tough. I've been doing a lot of research into different things you can do health-wise to sort of mitigate some of those things coming along in our later years. So it's been quite interesting having a read of all of it. And of course, chatting to the doctor to say, you know, what can I do now to help joints and things like that? because you sort of go through the first half a year. Well, I did. Probably there's people out there that are a lot healthier and very mindful of these things at a very young age, but I grew up very healthy on a farm, lots of veggies, fresh meat and veggies all the time, being on a farm kid. But as soon as I moved to Brisbane, it was like, wow, look at all of this at your fingertips, fast food. So you become lazy and not as active, because I'd gone from working morning and night pre-school, before school on the farm. Like, there was always a job to do. Dad would have us doing something, milking cows and harvesting produce, to coming to Brisbane, and I discovered movies, video stores, snacks, takeaway, and the lifestyle was just completely different. And I actually felt like I was on a holiday for 25 years. Repercussions are, now I'm hit the 50 mark and I'm starting to get those letters in the mail from the state government that say, happy birthday, go and get your boobs squashed between 2 plates and see if there's something sinister. Go and do this test, do that test. I won't discuss that other test because it's not very, nice. It's at the other end of society. So, yeah, it sort of then makes you think, and of course everything's okay, but it makes you wonder, doesn't it? All those years of being abusing my body as such, not being as healthy as I could have been. So, yeah, it's sort of been a bit of a wake-up call. I'm guessing that's what the state government wants us to do, is just take a moment. You've reached halfway, because I'm halfway, I'm 50, so I'm halfway between now and 100. So, and I've probably had a good 18 years of good living on the farm. And then between 18 and 50, you do the maths, it's a while. I've had a holiday. So now I'm starting to think, well, the next 50 years, I probably need to be considering what I could do to make sure I get to the 100 by eliminating some of the issues that I could be getting. I'm just going to go around this stamp. I pretty much have stitched down the obvious areas. There's probably another one there I could do there. I hope I'm on camera. I'm talking away. Now I'm just going to do a few little highlight things. So I just spotted this stamp. Whether the stamp is under the floral piece, probably, but it doesn't matter. So I'm just going to go around that little stamp with a few stitches. So that's where I'm at. This chit chat's all about health stuff, isn't it? Because I guess I've realised too that there's going to come a day where I'll be able to do as much crafting as I want full time, as in retired. And I'd love to know that my eyesight made it, my joints made it, my mind makes it. So I guess at 50 I've got to start investigating what I can do now to make sure that I'm still doing this 100. Could you imagine me on YouTube when I'm 100 years old? Won't that be a scream? Won't that be a scream? My staff would always joke when I was working in the stores themselves. Like, if you don't know, I own Christmas shops. And the very early years, the first 10, 15 years, my husband and I, we were on the shop floor because we only had the one shop. Then we got 2, etc., etc. And as we got more stores, we sort of had to pull away from those general duties at store level because you just cannot do everything. That was a bit of a wake-up call. You can't work all day in a shop serving customers, which is our true passion, helping people put together Christmas for their parties and things, and then come home and do wages and do bookwork and BASs and GST and government stuff. And oh, I tell you. And you were just so tired because you'd been on your feet all day doing a 9-10 hour day, filling shelves and cleaning and chatting to customers and, managing a retail outlet. And you'd get home and, oh, the back, the feet, the knees. And then as we grew, as our business grew and grew, you just can't do it all. And I think it was our accountant who said to us one day that you two are not going to make it if you don't start delegating and you don't start thinking a little smarter about your daily duties. And my husband was pretty quick to take that on board, but I wasn't. I was like, no, I can't let it go. I've got to do this. I've got to be here, you know, really running at a million miles an hour. When my husband was like, no, he's right, you know, we're starting to find things happen to our body. Like he had a season where his foot was just paining and he had developed a spur from so much walking and not having probably really good shoes that season. So that was a bit of a wake-up call for him that, you know, he's got to be able to walk. But nothing like that had hit me. So I was still going 10 to the dozen and he kept saying, no, be careful, be careful. And then I think it was when we opened up the third store and we'd finished building it and it was ready to open, I just hit a wall. I literally hit a wall. I was just exhausted, and it was only like October, so we hadn't even traded the season. So I had 2 shops plus a pop-up store, and we had set it up and it was ready to go, and now it was October, middle of October, so we're getting ready for the season to start, to really get going. And oh boy, was I exhausted, and it pretty much wiped me out for about 6 weeks. And that's when I realised that as I was getting older, I just couldn't keep up with all of that behaviour and had to start thinking a little smarter. So I guess the same thing's happening now at the age of 50, because I'm going through lots of medical tests just to make sure everything's all right, and checking hormones and checking this, checking that, and a few lumps and bumps that seem to be fine and normal, and we all have them, and, you know, all of that sort of stuff. So, yeah, it's funny you have stages of your life when you reassess things, where you just go, hang on a minute, if I'm going to do that in the future, it's not going to happen if I don't keep doing this now. I think it's really important. Really important. I was actually at the chemist the other day and I was looking for some more magnesium tablets. Magnesium and vitamin D is my hit list at the moment. A blood test showed that I was really low in vitamin D. So they gave me a course of tablets to pep that back up, which it did. And I felt so much better. It's like I had clarity of mind. When you start looking into what all these vitamins do for us, they're amazing, absolutely amazing. So magnesium is one that's on my hit list at the moment too now. And someone was telling me, I was with family, and one of them is, well, a couple of them are actually nearly professional athletes, like they're amazing. So if you've got any muscle related questions from overactivity, they're the ones in the family I probably go to, because they're right in amongst sports. And they were recommending magnesium cream. So if you get restless legs, cramps and things like that, it's a sign that your magnesium is a little low. So I was in the chemist looking for magnesium cream that I can rub, or oil, that I can rub straight into a calf muscle or whatever muscle is, you know, feeling tight as if it's about to cramp, which I thought, what a great idea. So I thought I'd better add that to my arsenal. And the lady in the chemist, she was really good. She seemed to be right up on this whole magnesium and vitamin D. And she said out of the two, they were just so important for our bodies. And she was saying that if you take magnesium tablets, now I'm quoting a chemist, so I don't know if this is 100% correct or not. So if I'm wrong, you know, I'm wrong, but don't take it as medical advice anyway. She was telling me that if you take a tablet, especially the solid tablets, there's only 2 points within your digestive system where magnesium can be absorbed into your body. And she said, and out of a tablet, a hard tablet, not an oil capsule, only 10% of it is taken by your body. It just passes through before it really gets a good chance to absorb what it can out of your supplement. So she said, always get the capsules with the oil. And the other thing she told me with this cream is a very good way of getting magnesium into your body quickly and efficiently. So she was a big advocate of it, and she showed me a couple brands. Two or three were sold out. She said they're just never on the shelf, so obviously a lot of people use them, but I managed to get a cream, and yeah, looking forward to when that all starts. It's usually the change of seasons it gets me from winter into summer. Plus summer, I'm doing a lot more physical activity within our business, so I'm probably perspiring more and losing valuable minerals through perspiration. So that's when I start to notice that of an evening, my legs will be twitching in bed and carrying on. So my cousins, who are athletes, said I needed some magnesium cream to rub into my calf muscles to help them to relax. And even the chemist lady said you have to take it every day, because within 24 to 48 hours, all the goodness that you are building up with the magnesium is starting to diminish in your body, because your body is constantly using it to do what it does. So I thought that was really interesting. Now, please don't take it as medical advice. I'm going on what a lady at the chemist has told me. I'm sure she knows what she's talking about, mind you, more so than me. So this is not a health channel. So if you disagree, that's all well and good. If you agree, that's all well and good. Either way, seek your own medical advice. I'm just going to take the camera up a little bit because I'm just getting ready to add this piece of lace. It feels like it goes better this way. It's got more of the swish, but it's actually upside down. Doesn't matter, because sometimes the lace is just as pretty on the other side. I sort of like the shape better. Sort of feels a little bit more. Yeah, I'm going to stitch it down, actually upside down, to be honest. Okay, let's get some needle and thread. Whoops. When I cut this down to size for the panel to go onto the journal cover, I will run another line of stitching around the perimeter to frame it. But until I know whether it's going to cover the cover or enhance the cover like a panel, I'm sort of just going to leave that edge for now until I know how I'm applying it. I wonder if I can put this up the right way, but bend it because it's fabric. Maybe I can get it to get into that shape I want. Yeah, I can. There you go. So I got it the right way now. And I'm just sort of easing the branch around to get that swishy movement up the page that I want. My little stamp's not covered either, so I'm happy with that. Okay, easy. So this is simple. So now I'm just going to go around the outside of the piece of lace and just stitch it all down. Like so. It'll take a little while as I go around, but if you want to go off and do something else now, you can by all means leave the class. Because I'm just going to now whip stitch around this lace to secure it. So there'll be nothing exciting happen here. How are we going? 30 minutes. It'll be 30 minutes of stitching and yibby yabba. Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's like, feels nice and secure. You've got to be a bit tricky with, a bit careful with lace when it's going on a cover of a journal, because your hands are constantly picking that journal up, touching it. You don't want it to be put into, say, your backpack or your bag and it gets caught on something. So when you're putting lace down on a cover, you've really got to take your time and get plenty of stitches. Or look, you could glue it by all means. I could have put a glue on the back of the lace, like a PVA, and it would be there forever. But I'm going to stitch it because I really love stitching. And it's nice just to slow down and do a little bit of hand sewing. And I know it will not move then. Now I've got a knot. What happened? I was going nicely there. Okay. Thread the needle. Excuse me. Okay. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, it's better. Now I'm up and away again. So I'll just stay on the perimeter of the piece at the moment, and then once I get it stitched down, I'll come back through maybe 1 centimetre in and do it again, and then another centimetre in and do it again. Just to, you know, make sure that it's... I think I mentioned in the first video of this little series that I was hoping to have a fire to burn a heap of documents that have come out of filing for previous financial years. I still haven't had my fire. And I'm still looking at them in the middle of the hallway. I'm just determined not to drag them back into the cupboard because they'll end up staying there. So if I leave them where I can trip over them, I will stay more focused on the task of destroying them. Does anyone else do that? Don't pack it away, deal with it. I do. It's a constant reminder that there's a task. I do that in my craft room too. If I have an idea that I'd like to make X, you know, say I see something on YouTube or something somewhere inspires me, I will start building the project. And I've got this desk where I just sort of place elements that will go towards the project, whether it be fabric or some lace or, I don't know, papers. And then it just sort of sits there and percolates. And sometimes I find that I go off the idea. It's like, oh, I don't want to do that now. I think half the fun is fleshing it out too, planning it. And then there'll come a day where I'll just pop it all back in the cupboard where I got it from. It's like, no, that didn't inspire me. It didn't eventuate to anything. Does anyone else do that? I'd rather do that at the beginning of a project and figure out that it's not for me or something else has come from it than starting it immediately and then realising, nah, I've lost interest. This is not what I thought it'd be. I think that helps me not have lots of unfinished projects. And that's my story anyway. But there'd definitely be projects that I thought I was going to do and then they end up back in the cupboard because just nothing came of it. So I'm just going to end that off. There's Pepper and Bandit having a play. I'm really liking how my journals are evolving into a combination of the journal world as well as the stitchery world. So I think that just makes them very interesting. And I think too, in the future, if my journals end up with a family member, they've got a real snapshot of my work. Not only is it a journal and a, goodness me, oh, they've got a toy and twisted rope and they're chasing each other for it. So I do apologise for the doggy sounds. They've got quite rambunctious. Yeah, so I like the idea that I'm now dragging space for needlework into my journals. So that way if I make a random piece, I can go find a journal that it sort of suits. Or if I'm looking for inspiration, the journal itself becomes something that inspires it. And if there's a blank page in there waiting for me in 4 years' time, I can open this journal and go, oh, Tim Holtz. I might do an embroidery to suit this sort of theme. And it's sort of, even though it's an unfinished project, because there'll be pages in here where, you know, embroidery can go in the future, it's sort of somewhere to go. Does that make sense? And even if I never stitch it, maybe someone in the future will pick up that journal with all of the snippets of Tim Holtz in there and do something. It's my theory anyway. Okay, coming up around the top of my piece. Lovely. So nice to stitch through this cotton lace snippet. I always go down the ladies, well, probably more the girls, the young girl clothing aisles at the op shop, because if there's going to be any little crocheted bodices or little jackets or crocheted elements, I find that it's more in the children's wear than the adults. The children seem to get a little bit more of those laces added to their clothing. So I always go for a little walk through that section and see if I can pick up anything that could be used, like this little vest. And it's cotton, so it's gorgeous to stitch, and it feels old, but it's not at all. I think it comes from Ellie. It's a clothing line for kids, or not kids, young adults, or anyone who's of an age that is like size 10 can sneak in there. That is not I. But I tell you, if I spotted something that I could cut up in there, it would be not a bad option, because it's quite reasonably priced clothing. It's all around that $20 mark to $25, and if there was a lace over jacket or something in there that was just screaming at me, I would purchase it and then proceed to chop it up. Okay, so I need to knot this off. My thread is getting small. wonder how many people switched off once they saw I was just doing needlework and chatting. The rest of you, I bet, are doing something yourself, and you've just got me playing in the background, and I'm just keeping you company, because that's what I do when I'm not filming and I just want to do something, you know, like something like this. I just bring up YouTube, start at the top of my favorites list and say, right, what's Rachel doing? What's Gail doing? What's Willow House 507 doing? Oh, there's heaps of them. Just goes on and on. What's Susanna doing? My Aussie girlfriend that is also on YouTube. Vintage Studio Blend, or, oh, sorry, Susanna, I can never remember that. I will once I stop yabbering, it'll come to me. So I'd like to see what Susanna's doing, because Susanna does all sorts of needlework. And she's brave. She is brave. She will tackle any animal. Any animal. Just using stitches to colour them in, so to speak. Very brave. I've done a few animals, but I tend towards birds. I did a hare. That's on a video somewhere in my playlist. There was a hare that I embellished. But he was pre-printed, and all I did was add lace and pearls. So it wasn't too hard. And stitches. And then, what else have I done? Lots of birds. I find birds really easy. You can do anything with a bird, because who's going to hold you accountable because it's a bird? But you go and do a hippopotamus, and it's got to look like a hippopotamus. Now, Susanna would do that, and it'd be amazing. So I'm a bit of a groupie. Okay. And floral, well, floral's safe. If you're just starting out in the world of stitching, stay in the floral category for a while. There's plenty of fabrics around printed with floral that you can embellish with stitches or lace and beads, and, you know, there's heaps. Floral's a very good category to stay within. Birds would be my next category. And then, yeah, into the animal kingdom. Okay, coming along nicely. How are we going for time? Plenty of time. Be good to get this done, because I sort of want to move on with my journal. And I find that once I get the cover sorted, it sort of sets the tone for the journal. My journal of stitchery, with a theme of Tim Holtz and cotton lace, floral, letters. I'll have to go find now some digital kits that complement it, because I will add a little bit of paper, I think, in the centre, so that if I ever want to record anything to do with projects, I have a spot in the centre. Well, I'm thinking along that line. If I ever want to put some snippets of fabric in there that I may have used on a project, I think that would be a lovely spot to do. I think I mentioned in a earlier video that I've been lucky enough to secure a ticket to go to Paris for a week on a tour with Lisa Mattock. She is a textile stitching lady from Sydney that has a business called Forage, and she sells in her business antique vintage pieces from France, Italy, Britain, everywhere. She's been doing tours to France for a few years, and of course COVID stopped that, and I sort of found her probably at the beginning of COVID when I was looking for some activities to do, and I was going down the rabbit hole of embroidering and slow stitch, and I needed cottons, and Lisa has a lovely range of cottons in packs where you get I think it's nine like cottons like these in a box, and they're put together as a complementary sort of range. And I found that, somehow I found it, and purchased probably about 4 packs, and away I went. And that's sort of how I really started delving into the slow stitch world and building up different threads for my you know, collection of threads. I had the basics, like I've done tapestry and I've done cross stitch in my previous stitching adventures, but I sort of, and I had crocheted but more blankets, so I had random threads like yarns that I've used for couching down and creating texture and stuff like that, but I didn't have much in the way of crochet cottons that were finer that I could use for actual embroidery. So Lisa sort of got me kick-started with a bit of a range of colours, and because they were in packs, it was really good because it gave me a feel for probably what I liked. And I think I picked, I think I actually did all the packs, to be honest. I'll put a link to her website in the description. I need to make a note of that, otherwise I'll forget. Where's a piece of paper? Okay. So, I need to write in the description the name of this fabric, the fabric name, and also any digital kits that I end up using with this. What was the other thing I wanted to do? I don't know if this Tim Holtz paper is still available. It might be from a little while ago. It's not paper that I had. As I said, I pulled this apart from a journal I'd purchased, so don't know the history of the paper, but I'm sure there's Tim Holtz products out there that might be okay. So I might just put a link to Tim Holtz Amazon, and that at least will get you some visual looks at the different papers out there. What was the other thing I was going to do? Oh, Lisa's website. So if you're a journal maker in the way of paper and you'd like to get into embroidery, like a little bit more of that type of work, I'd recommend going to Lisa for a little look. Steph Francis is another one that has a fantastic website of threads and bits and pieces that you can buy, and lots of little packs. I'm sure there's more out there. If you know of any others actually that you've shopped with, pop them in the comments, because I'm always looking for new outlets to sort of peruse. So yeah, if you've got a favourite embroidery supply place, pop it in the comments, their website, and then we can all go for a little look through the comments and sort of see if there's someone there or a business there that we've never heard of, and we can go for a little wander and see what we can see. If you're in Brisbane and you're wanting a day out, go and see Allthreads at Morningside. So south side of Brisbane, but close to the Brisbane River, is a suburb, Morningside, and there is a little shop there. It's under a house, and it is full to the brim with treasures for this embroidery world. So whether you're a cross stitcher or a slow stitcher or whatever, it's there. I must go back. I'm chasing a few thread colours that I'm getting a bit low on in the Journal of Stitchery project, the gunmetal grey blue that I'm using for my base embroidery. Getting a bit low, so I'm going to have to do a little road trip. What a shame. Oh dear. They have a pretty good website too. So I might put their details in the description. So it's either All About Threads or All Threads. But I'll have the details below so you can go and have a look at their website, or better still, go and have a visit. Actually, anyone from New Zealand, if you have some favourite places that you visit, pop them in the comments. I've got a group of people that are looking at doing a cruise to New Zealand Easter next year, and my husband and I are considering going along. It's not a long cruise, so we only get to go to some of the capital cities and some of the classic sightseeing places. So if you wouldn't mind, pop in there some shops that may be in those capital cities that specialise in embroidery and thread and all those types of things that are maybe accessible in a day. And then, of course, anyone who lives in New Zealand, there might be a shop pop up in the description, or sorry, in the comments that you were unaware of. Anyway, I was talking about the trip to Paris. So this journal that I'm working on now is nearly me fleshing out a journal for that trip to Paris, because it's a textile lace vintage tour. And I'm sure I'll come back with lots of fabrics and laces and trims and things. I hope so. And what I'm thinking is, before they disappear into my stash and become, you know, fodder for whatever project, I would really like to create a journal, like in the theme of, say you were a travelling salesman for a haberdashery company back in 1888, and you would have had all of your samples in a journal, and you would have gone from shop to shop hoping that, you know, people would order from your catalogue. So in that vein, I would like to make a journal for myself which has a snippet of all the bits and pieces that I found on that tour. So down the future, when I'm reminiscing, I can pull the journal out and see, you know, my journey for that week in Paris, and I can see snippets of materials and laces and trims that I gathered. So yeah, I'm sort of thinking along, how will I construct it? What will it look like? What size? It probably won't go with me in the suitcase. I don't want to limit myself. And to be honest, we'll be so busy enjoying the Paris trip that I just know when I get back to the room of an evening, I'm not going to sit down and journal. I'm just going to need to sleep. So it'll be something I create after my trip. So yeah, this journal is what I would call a hybrid of paper and cloth. And if I can construct it in a way that it works to do both. So if I had a postcard, for example, and I had a menu or a photo, it can join snippets of fabrics and lace that's come from a particular visit to an outlet or something like that. So that's in the back of my mind. What do I construct? What colour theme? Do I keep it neutral? What ephemera do I have that is from that era? Nothing, basically. But maybe I've got a couple old French books that I use as fodder in building a journal. So I've definitely got some French paper that is antique. They're only like little school books that kids would use to learn a particular play or read a story. So I've got a little bit of that, but not much else, which is fine because that may come from the trip. At the end of the day, the trip is definitely all about textiles, but I think I want to record, you know, the places I went to as well. So there'll be snippets of things, I'm sure. I'm hoping that we get to Versailles. Have a look at that place. So there's sort of a section in the book that could be Versailles related. Gosh, it might end up being volumes, hey? That's the thing with fabrics. Once you start adding them to books, they can get quite chunky. So it's maybe I need to break the book down into categories. The actual trip itself and the sightseeing, and then a lace, and then a fabric. Like, you see what I mean? I just jabbed myself. It could be quite a project. So that's in the back of my mind. I'm sort of testing different styles of journals at the moment. I'm thinking about that. I think that lace is pretty secure. I'm happy with that. I'll just give it a little tug to make sure I haven't missed. Yeah, that feels good. So I haven't had to use glue, so it still feels nice and soft and good to touch. I've got some little decorative stitches around things. Like, you could really go to town. I could seed stitch all through here as well. That would be really pretty. But I don't know if I will. I think I'm just going to let the lace do its thing. Yeah, okay. So I'll leave it at that. The next decision I've got to make is, do I cut it down to the size of the journal, or do I cover the journal with the fabric? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to cut it down and then just add it to the cover of the journal itself. But that's a video for another day. All right, everyone, I will say goodbye and I'll see you all in the next video. Look after yourselves. Bye for now.